Hi, my name's Gavin Bottrell. My website's hickorygolf.co.uk. It's now the 3rd of November 2021 and I'm back in my garage making a few clubs. Long noses usually is what I like to do, and I posted a video a couple of days ago of me making a club. The steps involved, which was this one, which is a replica 18th century scraper, and I had a question posed by somebody saying could I give a little bit of information about the wood grain. Okay, so when I started making clubs many years ago, and this is the 32nd club that I've made, so I'm not sort of touting myself as a absolute master club maker or anything like that. There's guys that have probably done thousands in their lives, but I've hopefully learnt enough that I can help other people. So when you're looking at a club, a block of wood, and you're trying to decide what way that the wood needs cut, well, sometimes it's almost decided for you, because this is a quite small piece of wood, and I think this is apple, and you can see that the way basically what I'm saying is you've got to look for which way obviously the grain is going. Now traditionally, if you might see this in some sort of books about old clubs or club making in general, what you're looking for is, if this is your head, and let's call this bit the neck, end for neck, and this is the let's say the head, the main body of the head. So here's going to be the scare neck. What you ideally want is you want the grain of the wood going up at an angle like this, certainly as you look end on onto the club, because basically you want to try and get as much strength spreading between the neck portion and the, one might say, head portion. So ideally you want at least the grain, one orientation of the grain running up the neck. So that's just to orientate you, this would be horizontal on the ground and this would be sticking up in the air. Okay, I'll just bring that closer to the camera. But because it's a three-dimensional piece of wood, what then happens is when you would be looking down onto either the neck or the head, you will see another pattern of grain. And ideally, there's varying schools of thoughts on this. So if I was to draw in here, this is the top of the face of the club, as if I'm looking down on it, and here's the name, and let's just put H. Philp, to pick a random name out of the air for those of you who like old golf clubs. So this is the hitting face here on this line. So here I can see that the grain is running straight along like this. Now one school of thought is that that's okay, but ideally, let me just bring that there, the ideal grain is something like this, where it's radiating out from a small portion at the toe, and then it's going end on here into the hitting face like this. Okay, so on the club I've just made, I'll illustrate that. So if I bring that really quite close up to the camera, you can see, if hopefully the light hits it right, that here I've got little circles radiating down like this. Okay, and also what's going to affect that is the way that the amount of curvature there is on the top of the head here. I'll just try and bring that a bit closer. Hopefully the camera can pick that up. Okay, so there, perhaps an angle like that. You can see here you've got one might say, the center of the circle, and then it's radiating outwards. Okay, so that's basically a little bit about head grain. Now, there are, I'm sure, experts out there who will say, well, actually you want the grain slightly to one side and stuff like this, but for my purposes, what I'm in making replica clubs, I think I've got it just about right. One thing to say is certainly when you've got a block of wood, and let's see here, I've got a couple of pieces. I'm not absolutely sure what that block is, but this one is labelled up beech that I've got back here on the bench. Sorry, I'll just lift that up. That's beech. I think this is pear, but I'm not absolutely sure. It's very quite widely grained. It could be cherry. Anyway, one thing to look out for whenever you're cutting out the major two portions of a long nose golf club is there any knots in the wood? And let's see if I can just find, well, okay, so here on this top edge, just there's a huge knot in the wood, and indeed if I turn it end on, you can see that there's a big crack there. Now, for a wood to be functional, you don't want any knots in it. But that said, one thing that helps us date very, very old golf clubs is if it does have some knots in it, funnily enough. And the school of thought is that the club makers at that time weren't quite as knowledgeable, and so they, you know, if it was a small knot, they might just sort of incorporate it into the design of head. I'm not quite sure about that thought in terms of, I think they knew exactly what they were doing. They'd probably made a lot of things out of wood, but it's quite possible that that they had a piece of wood and they just wanted it to get as many clubs out of it as possible. So if they saw a small knot that didn't have a big fissure in it, they just said, well, okay, we'll make this, and maybe they might make a putter which would have a lot less force on it than, say, a play club. Or they might decide, well, I could either throw that piece of wood away, or I could make a head out of it and I could sell it to somebody at a slightly reduced price, something like that. And it may just be that some of the very, very ancient long noses that have survived were almost seconds, one might say, not quite the first rate heads, who knows. But anyway, hopefully that gives you some information if you are wanting to attempt to make a club yourself. I started my first club, I think it was in 2007, so that is quite unbelievably 14 years ago. And one thing with making your own clubs is it teaches you things that you won't necessarily read in books or see on videos such as this. And it's very much a case I would encourage anybody to have a go at making a head. It may not turn out, the first one might not turn out too great, but you will certainly learn a lot by doing, and I'm a great advocate of doing things to learn. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or observations, you can email them to me on info@timewarpgolf.com. Time Warp is my company, and my website is hickorygolf.co.uk. Bye.